military supply chains are very often around resilience. Um, Money is spent, right, for events that may or may not happen.
And I believe it's nearly impossible to achieve all three of them.
So I think it's always a matter of balancing risk, either risk that you control yourself or risk that the bigger supply chain that you're dealing with, right? And so that's the natural human reaction to hearing that the boss wants to change something, right? Deep down inside of us, it's really the first recorded instance of a hacker hacking into a system that's been there perpetually. So if you have computers running your supply chain, and I am famous for saying you can't have a supply chain without computers, be it the adoption of new technology or a big supply chain transformation, you've got to bring the people along, because as the leader, it's really easy for you to say or to make a PowerPoint slide. Typically in the U.S. Navy, you're at an assignment for 2 or 3 years and you leave. But the flip side of that coin is that AI is going to be coming very quickly that can counter cyber attacks.
Right. The first one is how you define your leadership approach in one word. So if you mentioned 3 technologies, if you have to pick one in the 3 technologies you mentioned, which one it would be? Any book or somebody as a person who has influenced your career the most? If you have to pick a movie or a song to explain supply chain, what it would be?
This video is brought to you by us, SCM Dojo. We provide awesome courses, guides, best practices for supply chain community.
Hi folks, welcome to one more episode of Supply Chain Show, and today I have someone who is very special, and that person have a background from a military, because as you know, historically logistics was born from the military background in 1912, and the whole thing was basically proceed from there. So today we have Kurt Wendelken, and he is a partner and director at a Boston Consulting Group. As we know, Boston Consulting Group is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, supply chain consulting companies. Welcome, Kurt. How are you?
Thank you, Mudassir. Great to be here. Thanks for your invitation.
Good. Thanks for your time. It was hard to get you, but I appreciate your people has eventually got me the time. I think I've been chasing you for last 2 months, so I understand your time is important. I just want to start is you have been into Navy, you have managed this complex supply chain, which is pretty regimental, no pun intended, right? And then you move to, let's call it, more commercial supply chain, which is consulting. So just give me some background of the transition and draw me some parallels between the two.
Okay, great. So I did about 35 years in the United States Navy, 26 in uniform as a supply corps officer, and then 8 years as a senior executive, which is a senior civilian official, also in supply chain. And I then retired from the Navy and had an opportunity to join Boston Consulting Group and do a lot of the same work, helping our clients with their supply chain challenges and using the things that I learned running Navy supply chains that almost all directly apply to civilian supply chains.
Okay. Can you give me an example where what you've learned from the Navy supply chain resilience, which has give you, let's call it, a slightly corporate advantage, or actually a very proven use case which you applied into, let's call it, operational supply chain?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think, as you correctly point out, military supply chains are very often around resilience.
Yeah.
Money is spent, right, for events that may or may not happen, but when they do occur, we will not have the time to accumulate whatever is needed for that event. And I think what's really interesting, what I observed here recently, we all did, is the COVID pandemic, right? Which kind of flipped the normal commercial supply chain script on its head, because that script had been one really focused on cost. And cost is always important, but I think lots of folks have learned because of that event that you really need to strike a balance between cost and resilience. And even in the U.S. Navy, right? We did have good funding, but again, it's always trade-offs and making decisions about where do you want to make an investment for resilience versus where is something where you really have to focus on cost.
I mean, it's great you mentioned this balance between cost and resilience. And actually, I made a post or a tweet yesterday, which I haven't posted on LinkedIn, but on these three words: cost, targets, resilience, and agility. And I believe it's nearly impossible to achieve all three of them. You can have resilience and maybe cost, but agility won't be there. If you have agility and resilience, maybe the cost target won't be met. And if you have agility and cost, then it might not be resilient, right? What's your take on it? And is it possible to achieve all
No, no. So yeah, I think viewing it that way, right? I often think of it as a triangle, right? And the triangle is never going to be a perfect triangle, right? One side will be longer than the other, others will be shorter. And I think as a supply chain professional, in association with the other parts of your organization, you really need to say, hey, we can go and do that, but here are the potential risks there. So I think it's always a matter of balancing risk, either risk that you control yourself or risk that the bigger supply chain that you're dealing with, right? Can your suppliers get you the thing? Can they get the things that they need from their suppliers to build the thing that you need or the thing you want to stock? So I think it is a perpetual risk puzzle that as a supply chain professional, you constantly have to be reevaluating.
So we'll move the discussion. We have to talk about technology because we don't talk about ML, AI, and tech. No podcast will be completed. So you've led some projects, and you have in your current job and lot of transformation project. If I have studied your LinkedIn profile correctly, you've led transformation project with Navy as well. So what the biggest challenge you have seen? I know there's a lot of challenges. If you just have to highlight one, what that would be?
In transformation or in technology? I think
To technology. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Specifically in a military environment, you have additional cybersecurity requirements that you have to meet. So I think that's a risk. But I think transformation is always hard, even beyond the technology. And the part that's most challenging, because we talk about systems, we talk about organizations, but it really comes down to people, right? There are people doing the work, and you have to really communicate to them, what are we doing and why are we doing it? And then you also need to be able to address their concerns, because the second any of us hear something is changing, we're afraid that we're going to be left out. And so that's the natural human reaction to hearing that the boss wants to change something, right? That deep down inside of us, we're concerned that for whatever the reason, we'll be left out. Our children won't have shoes, right? We'll be bad parents. All those really deep emotional things that we have. So I think that it really, at the end of the day, whatever it is that you're doing, be it the adoption of new technology or a big supply chain transformation, you've got to bring the people along, because as the leader, it's really easy for you to say or to make a PowerPoint slide, but the team is really the one that has to embrace it and make it happen.
That's valid point, I think. And when we talk about team has to embrace it and make it, the people on the ground are probably the first contact points when something happened from the cyber security and threat perspective, right? Because they're the first to notice. And actually, just before this call, I was with my team. Actually, our website has seemed to just down, right? Because there's something up with Cloudflare. And when I went to check on Twitter, because they have the latest and the hottest news, actually Twitter is down because of Cloudflare. Then I went to see ChatGPT Gemini. Gemini is down. So imagine one simple service provider, which is CDN for security, and there was not working since last half an hour. And guess what? One of the biggest websites in the world are not working. right? And they must be down for whatever reason. So the point I'm making is following, that there is a drive to become digital, right? Take the upcoming menu supply chain, and that's right. And I have a course on supply chain digitalization, and I'm one of the biggest evangelists of that part. Great. But the digitalization comes with the heavy cyber security threats, right? So if you being an expert in this area, and again your background in military and stuff, and you have this natural training of risk, and risk is anything, a threat is a threat, maybe cyber or not. What advice you will give it to leaders? So again, just to be very precise, digitalizers do the right thing, but what they have to do to avoid those cyber threats?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the first thing is, if you think about supply chains and how they evolved, there was a very deep uh, reliance on technology from the beginning, right? So a lot of what we have today in terms of computers really did begin in supply chain because it was recognized really early on. You needed computers to make your demand planning, to keep track of where your inventory was. So that's a constant, right? We're doing new things. We call it digital, AI, ML, but it's been a constant. Also, it's been a constant really from the beginning. If people are interested in reading about it, there's a book called The Cuckoo's Egg, written by a gentleman named Clifford Stoll. It's really the first recorded instance of a hacker hacking into a system that's been there perpetually. So if you have computers running your supply chain, and I am famous for saying you can't have a supply chain without computers, um, you have to mentally prepare yourself for either, like you described, just a normal outage, because there's a key service provider that provides service for you, and their systems go down because that's what happens sometimes. But you should not be surprised if someone comes in and hacks your system for whatever the reason. And one of the things that the military is really excellent about is preparing plans in advance of need. So as a business, right, Kurt's free advice would be, you should really prepare a response plan, right? And it doesn't have to be anything elaborate. It can be a normal binder with, hey, what are the things we're going to do, right? We're going to go check on Twitter. We're going to go check this other site. Maybe we're going to call somebody, right? But I think when you lay it out ahead of time, it gives you a framework that makes it a little less terrifying, because you have maybe your first 10, your first 15 steps laid out ahead of time, and you know what to do, right? And you build that, and then as things happen, your learning will grow. You'll modify your plan, but I think that's a really powerful thing for people who are running any kind of business, honestly, that runs on computers or any other kind of machinery, to really think ahead. Because sometimes your brain's not running perfectly when you're frightened that your website's down or your payment system isn't working, right? So you're kind of giving yourself a little bit of support by having some sort of pre-prepared plan available for you to refer to, so you know what the steps are, or for your team to go through the steps to try to figure out what's going on and get it under control and get operations restored as quickly as you can.
Yeah. I mean, recently, a lot of big websites was down because Amazon Web Services was not working. So I think what you're trying to say is these things bound to happen. It will happen, but you have to trust that there is a recovery plans available in on with those providers. They will always come back, and I think cybersecurity is getting important, and it will be there as well. But I don't want to uh, make it slightly controversial for the hope, but then I'll share an experience. I went to this conference in US, New York, and there is she's also a consultant. Her name is Dr. Eloise something. I forget the second name, right? And she wrote a book, an article around the supply chain threats, right? And then she mentioned something along the lines in the keynote, Dr. Eloise, that uh, I mean, allow me to say that, okay, that if you are buying from China and China US or China, whoever the company is, they are using the supply chain or supply base to do some, let's call it, spy work and things like this, right? So I'm just very inclined, and you can pass if you don't want to answer. By all means, don't answer. But I have to ask you because I don't know a lot of people who has a military background, right? Especially in supply chain. So, do you think that kind of things are possible? You know,
So I'm not familiar with her or her work. What type of things are possible? What is the
if you are a Chinese data services providers, or for example, data centers or things will go, because of course GPUs are made in predominantly in USA, Nvidia and all that, but data centers are not just made by GPUs. You supply a lot more parts to make a data center, for example.
Yeah, I don't really I don't really know. I think that the real question is who are your trading partners and are they trustworthy trading partners? And I think that's a that's a constant since humans began trading with each other, right? So I think that again I think it was important then, it's important now, right? You're to the best of your ability, you need to become aware of who your trading partners are and do you trust them, right? Are they giving you good service? Are they ethical, right? So yeah, and I think anything like that is really kind of a corner case. Um, and again, it's something that excites the brain to think about it, but again, in reality, I don't think it's a common occurrence that most businesses are going to have to face.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. So, giving you a military leader, it would be unfair for me not to talk about leadership with you, right? And you have been into leadership role both in uniform and in the civilized, commercial world as well. So, from your experience, just give me, let's call it, a transferable skills which has worked better in the world, and maybe one or two examples where you have to adopt your leadership style to suit it more to civil world.
Yeah, so let's start with what I think is common. What so first, Hollywood movies, or movies from anywhere, they're great, they're super entertaining. I think it kind of gives people an inaccurate portrayal of what military leadership really is. Um, it's always some senior military leader with lots of things on their chest and on their collars, right? And they just shout at someone and say, you do this thing or else, right? And that can happen. But again, what we were talking about before, that leader has to get other humans to go do something, right? So the same things that we talked about previously, why are we doing it? How are we doing it? Why is it important for us to do it? And leader, what things are you going to do to make it as safe as possible for me to go and do this, right? So I think that's a common leadership trait from being a military leader, and that applies to being a civilian leader. I think the only substantive real change is perhaps it can be a little shoutier in the military just because of where you are, the conditions, like life or death, right? And maybe the language gets a little saltier uh, than it would in an office setting. I think that, but again, I think there's much more in common to being a leader than there is a difference in being a leader between military and civilian.
Okay. Okay. No, that makes so. All in all, I think, but also believe that I've been in industry 17 years, and the beauty of supply chain is you can go within one day talking about strategy at next 5 years and budgeting plan and your staffing and basically the selecting a 3PL provider for next 3 years. So really high level long term vision. And you come to your desk and a sales guy is calling you and saying, "Oh, I'm short of part. Can you help me?" And then you're just really going down to the warehouse and talking to a planner and chasing parts, right? So the point I'm making is following that strategic thinking is required, but you need also a regimental, very operational day-to-day attitude to be a good leader, right? And I've seen one, I've been one myself, and I think there is some kind of military environment to really supply it. Would you agree?
Yeah, I would agree completely, right? And I'm going to link military, supply chain, and IT. There is a chaos element to all those three things that you plan for things to be a certain way, and then it often doesn't turn out exactly that way, or as you mentioned, right? There's some sort of crisis. Um, and, I used to joke that both supply chain people and IT people are chaos junkies, that we actually like the chaos and jumping in there and getting things back under control, right? And I think there's a certain emotional makeup for those kinds of careers, because that's really what it is, right? That the and no 2 days are exactly the same. They're It's constantly new problems being presented. And I had watched one of your videos where you talked about why supply chain is a great career choice for people. And I think if you're someone who really likes the variety, and I really like the variety, that supply chain really became an exciting and rewarding career for me, because I really do like something happened, and now we have to solve the puzzle and get things back under control.
Absolutely. I think very well said. But I like this term you use, chaos junkie, right? And I would slightly rephrase it and extend it by saying addicted to chaos, right? And
Absolutely. Yeah.
I have a question on learning and development, but I have a bridging question here. So if you and I've got two startups, right? I've got SCM Dojo where I train people, develop people, and guess what? People don't have a time for learning and development because they are so busy in chasing parts, running Excel spreadsheets, doing demand planning, working weekends, shipping stuff, and whatever, right? Because okay. Then I argue this, and I have one more startup called Plantrax, which is AI-powered demand planning forecasting, and they spend too much time in Excel creating dashboards and all that. So I am saying is following. If you use the AI-powered demand planning solution I have called Plantrax, it will basically save you time. It will give you predictive analytics. It will tell you your out of stock items. It will tell you your days of hand. It will basically give you all your prescriptive analysis. You just need to review, click the button, and do your presentation. And in fact, if you use agentic AI, it will chase parts for you as well.
Mhm.
And you can transfer your demand plan to supply plan. Boom, done. Everything is possible.
Yeah.
I present this. Yeah, great idea. Let's do that. But I don't have a time to test. Why? I'm super busy. And I'm thinking, okay, it's not even a chicken and egg problem. For me, it's simple because if you start using tech or start learning tech, right, or digitalization, you can make life easier by either automating or using agentic stuff or using prescriptive analysis to make your life better, make better decisions, or quicker and faster and efficient. But they can't find time to do any of that because they are, as you said, chaos junkies. So, how can we break that cycle? What do you think?
Yeah, well, I think the way I would suggest to people that they do it is, first, you do have time. You're deciding not to give time to learning or development, and if you want to rise in an organization, um, and all that brings, right? All the positive benefits of rising in an organization, you're going to have to broaden your skill set. So maybe you let someone else go fight a fire, and you take some time to broaden your experience, because again, um, I only got to where I got because I did take time, and leaders forced me to make time. And it's one thing that the Navy was very strong about, that the Navy really forced you to go out there and broaden your skill set. Um, so again, I understand it, And sometimes the activity feels so rewarding that you don't want to take time to go broaden your skill set. But honestly, if you took 15 minutes or 30 minutes a day to just read about something, like you, in a couple months, you'd be astonished, how much your learning had been broadened by just that tiny commitment of time. And everybody's got 30 minutes to put your phone down or, do something else. I think it's just a matter of not recognizing the value and impact of that.
I mean, even 30 minutes is a lot. I read somewhere that spend 8 minutes a day in just reading few pages. You can read 10 books in a year, right? 8 minutes, not a lot. I think you already answered my next question partially, but I want to dig deep on this. So you give a very good example of why Navy has pushed people, or let's call it enforce, or enforce the wrong word, let's call it strongly recommended to go and develop yourself, and they invested money. And therefore,
Yeah.
people like you who've been into started as a, I think, soldier, I'm not sure the position, let's call it soldier, and become a supply chain leader into Navy, and then you become a supply chain leader in one of the biggest consulting firm in the world. So, and I find it, and given I'm in this business of training and consulting, what is our vision and mission is to give supply chain to everybody, right? We created 76 courses, we got the 40 best practices, we have got the assessment tool, and we are cheap, $99 a month. It's not a lot of money per person, right? But then the issue I see here is for learning and development, there is no immediate ROI, right? If you people everybody's for looking for immediate ROI, right?
Yep.
So I can make a slide which says, okay, by having, or actually I have a slide by saying, if you train people, they can become better implementing processes, better using the system. It will reduce your lead time by 10%, improve your on-time delivery by 15%, reduce your inventory. You will have a better retention rate. You don't have to hire people, right? But still, people think it's all fluff, right? But giving you example, very simple question. If you have to give 2 minutes or 1 minute reasons of why supply chain people should invest time and not just leave it as a choice, but a mandatory for their people to learn and develop, what do you have to say?
Well, I think for individuals, my earlier point is if you desire to have a larger role in your current organization or future organization, you have to grow your skill set. You just have to, right? Mm. And then I think the other thing is, and this I think this is becomes more clear in the Navy because typically in the U.S. Navy, you're at an assignment for 2 or 3 years and you leave. So there's always a view as a leader that you're building the organization for the future. And I think if you run an organization, you should have that same view, that you should have the view that, you're growing your organization by investing in people's expertise. They will do better things for you. They will make your business more effective. They will uncover efficiencies that you may not see. So I think that's really my pitch. I think first it's really incumbent on, if you're someone who's content with the entry level job that you have, enjoy your entry level job, right? But that's almost nobody. And if you want to rise in that organization or in a different organization, you need to invest in yourself. And I think organizations should also invest in their people because, again, like you said, there isn't an immediate ROI, but it's accretive, and it actually occurs pretty quickly. And I've seen that. I've led a variety of different organizations, and I've seen that. In an organization with 5 people in it, or my last organization that had 24,000 people in it. Right? I've just seen it be true. So.
Very well, very well. I think I will make a short of that separately and put it. So we already talked about cybersecurity, but if you take that one out, and as you've seen in the last 5-6 years or decade, we have been a financial crisis, we have been to COVID, which happened in once in 100 years, and fewer, Suez Canal and wars and all that. So, what do you think are the biggest di- disruptions supply chain leaders should be mindful of?
Yeah, I think maybe COVID was the beginning. Maybe there was another beginning that we didn't notice quite as clearly. I think we're in a period of mild turbulence, and I think supply chain professionals, you should really ask, do I really just want one supplier for that thing? Um, what will I do if there is a disruption? Kind of to what we talked about before, right? That in your brain, mm, if you can't make a binder about it, you should at least be thinking about it. What happens if this supplier goes away? How do I how do I deal with that? I think onshoring, nearshoring is going to continue to be a thing.
Mhm.
Not in every case, um, but in some cases. And then I think the war for talent is real too. That that there, the people are the best people are in limited supply. So if you want the best people, you've got to come up with a compelling reason about why they should join your team. And then the last thing that I will say is that cybersecurity, although I think it has been a constant, I think AI will make that a little more exciting. I think we saw last week the first published account of an AI assisted cyber attack. But the flip side of that coin is that AI is going to be coming very quickly that can counter cyber attacks, right? So there are going to be some things that AI does better than humans do in cyber defense. So, but again, that space is not going to go away. It's I think it's going to continue to be a challenge, and people will have to increase their own personal knowledge of cyber and what do they need to do, or who do they need to partner with to make their system safer?
No, great answer. Great answer. Last big question before we move to our quick fire section.
Yep.
Uh, you talked about disruption quite a lot. I think very you explained it pretty well. Nothing to add from me. So if you have to pick like 2 or 3 trends, or maybe however many you want to pick, which can really change the way we do things in supply chain, what it would be?
Um, Change it in what way? Change it to make it
Not faster, improved,
yeah,
autonomous.
so first, before autonomous, I would say and this was something that we really learned in our supply chain transformation. If you have suppliers who are specialized, um you probably want to work to make that a more lasting and mutually beneficial relationship than a purely transactional relationship. So if you're just dealing commodities and you can buy sugar from 10 different people, yeah, maybe that doesn't work. It might work, but it doesn't work. But I think anything more complicated than really raw commodities, I think you need, if again, if you have trusted suppliers who do right by you and you do right by them, I think you need to look at more as a marriage and try to nurture and keep that relationship going, because I think it's hard to find those kinds of people and it's critical to your business. I think AI is going to continue to grow. It may not grow exactly the way we think it will, but I think there are lots of things that AI will prove to be doing very well. And I think teamed with humans, I think there's more and more of that going to happen. Um, and then I think the idea of quantum computing is also super, super interesting. It's really kind of fringe right now and on the edge, but supply chain optimization problems, kind of in the same way where CPUs weren't the answer for AI, graphics processing units were the answer for AI. Um, quantum computers are not going to be the answer for things that CPUs and GPUs do really well, but for optimization problems, they are going to be able to do multiple calculations simultaneously. And I think we will see optimization solutions that we may not have been able to imagine in the past. So I think those are probably the three biggest trends that I see out there.
That's I think yeah. I think I never heard about this quantum computing as a great use case for optimization and in supply chain, especially in network design, demand forecasting, supply selection. There's a huge amount of calculation and scenario planning is required. So I think you're very right, very right. All right. So few quick fire question. If you're ready, and one or two I is random. So see how you react to that. Right. The first one is how you define your leadership approach in one word.
Um, I, I really try to be a collaborative leader, and really listen to what my team is telling me, but recognizing that at some point, if I'm the leader, I have to make a decision, and we need to move forward. So I think that's my philosophy about leadership.
Right. That was more than one word, but it's okay. So you're in three riddles. That was one word. That was one word. I'll take that. So if you mentioned three technologies, if you have to pick one in the three technologies you mentioned, which one it would be?
Pick one.
Yes, pick one. Yeah,
I think AI.
great. Now, any book or somebody as a person who will influence your career the most?
There's an old book called Competing Against Time. It was published in 1990. I think despite being as old as it is, I think it still holds a lot of promise for supply chain professionals because supply chain is 1000% focused on time. Time only goes in one direction on planet Earth, and you have to master things within the time space you have.
Absolutely. As I keep saying, if you want to reduce inventory, focus on lead time, not quantity of selling. Right.
Exactly.
Very well said. So if if supply, so what supply chain mean for you, just beyond moving products? If you can define it in one sentence.
Everything's a supply chain.
Everything is supply chain. All right, that's a good one. If you have to pick a movie or a song to explain supply chain, what it would be?
Wow. The first part of the Tom Hanks movie Castaway before the plane crash.
Before the plane crash. Why is that?
So he's a troubleshooter for Federal Express,
Right.
and he travels around the world showing people how important time is and why certain things need to be in certain places ahead of time.
Right. That's a great answer. Thank you for your time. It's been awesome talking to you. I think all your answers are great. I think it's one of the most interesting podcasts I've done in recent time. And thank you for being here, and thanks for answering.
Thank you for inviting me. This has been fantastic. I look forward to seeing it.
Great. Hopefully you like it as well. So folks, hopefully you like all the good work Kurt has done. It will be published on YouTube channel. It will be published on our LinkedIn, Instagram pages. So go and do like, share, subscribe, and hopefully I'll see you again. Thank you very much. Ciao.
Thank you. See you. Bye-bye.